Uh, Before I go into the subject matter at hand, I want to explain the sound that you're hearing in the background. The sound you're hearing in the background is a fan. We were blessed with a remarkable period of cool weather where I live here in Richmond, Virginia, last week or so, but the heat and humidity has returned. It is quite warm where I am right now, and I'm not going to turn this fan off. So I'm going to try to emphasize my voice in this video. So I'm going to try to offset the sound of the fan as best I can. But the subject matter here at hand is I want to talk about why I feel that Wilt Chamberlain's playoff numbers, particularly his scoring numbers, are misleading. There's always been people who say, well, Wilt Chamberlain's overrated because look at his playoff production when it mattered. He only averaged 22.5 points per game during the playoffs. Great players always increase their scoring averages and all that whatnot. This is almost 8-point disparity between Chamberlain's regular season scoring average of 30.1 and Chamberlain's playoff average of 22.5. First thing I want to do is I want to separate Wilt's career into two different eras. I want to separate it into scoring champion Wilt years and post-scoring championship Wilt years, where he was the second, third, sometimes even fourth option on his team as far as scoring, particularly the last year that he played with the Lakers. Alright, so when you look at the numbers, the years when he was not the top scoring option for his team, well, not always, at least with the Sixers the first couple of years, and with the Lakers he was often the third, sometimes fourth scoring option. During these years he averaged 17.6 points. These are playoff numbers. 17.6 points. He shot 54% from the field. Look at his free throw percentage. It drops all the way to less than 43%. So as Wilt Chamberlain progressed in his career, much like Shaquille O'Neal, but even more of a drop. He progressively became an even worse free throw shooter throughout his career. He averaged 23.5 rebounds per game and 4.7 assists per game. You contrast that to the scoring champion Wilt years, where in the postseason he averaged 32.8 points per game, shot 50.5% from the field, 52% from the foul line, grabbed 26.4 rebounds per game, and dished out 3.2 assists per game. I also want to add that Wilt Chamberlain put up his 32.8 points per game. I think his high was 35 for a postseason. I'm going to double check that right now. As far as scoring. Wait a minute. Sorry, it's taking me so long. No, actually his high for a postseason was 37. Then 35. But anyway, of the 6 years, the first 6 years that he played the postseason, 5 of those years he and his teams were eliminated by the Boston Celtics, who were not only the best overall team in the NBA, that goes without saying, they were the best defensive team in the league, anchored by arguably the best defensive player of all time, Bill Russell. So he was still putting up these phenomenal numbers in the postseason while playing against the best team of the era. So you look at these different eras. Basically, it's 6 years with each year. 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. He didn't. Wilt Chamberlain did not make the postseason. His team did not make the postseason in the 62-63 season. But every other year, he was the postseason. So you would think that pretty much you sort of could take both eras and divide, and you would get his scoring average or his playoff scoring average. But when you take the median of these two numbers, 17.6 and 32.8, you get 25.2, much higher than 22.5 than his career scoring average is. So what's causing it? Well, I'll tell you. What's causing Wilt Chamberlain's career scoring average to be so low is the same thing that affected Oscar Robertson. And that is, during their heyday, not only were they on teams that weren't that good, the playoff format hurt them as well. During Wilt Chamberlain's heyday with the Warriors, as far as scoring, the playoffs were set up like this. There was a semifinals best of 5 and division finals best of 7. Also with the NBA finals. The first round series did not start that we know of until 1975, when more teams were added, and you had to have an additional round to have eliminate some of these teams. So that's where the first round came up. And back then, the first round was best of 3. But during Wilt Chamberlain's time, there were no first round series. And later on, during Wilt's career, the division semifinals were changed to a best of 7. This was during the years when Wilt was playing on better teams. And so you had an additional 2 games in the postseason. Also, during Wilt Chamberlain's latter part of his career, he was on better teams that went deeper in the playoffs. Whereas opposed to during his earlier years with the Warriors, it wasn't uncommon for him to only play 1 round or barely get out of the first round, only to lose to the Boston Celtics in a sweep of maybe 3 games. So he was playing a lot more games. Matter of fact, Wilt Chamberlain played 160 playoff games. Of those 160 postseason games, 108 came between 1967 and 1973, while only 52 came between 1960 and 1966. Further illustrating my point that Wilt Chamberlain's scoring average is much lower than it probably would be because of the playoff format and because he played on much better teams during the latter part of his career, which drove down his overall scoring average. So his scoring average is very misleading to me, as are other players like Oscar Robertson. If, for instance, the playoff format, had they played maybe, I'm just taking a wild guess here, but if Wilt Chamberlain had played probably 20 years later or so, his postseason scoring average probably would be closer to 26, 27 points per game, if I had to take a guess. So his postseason numbers, as far as scoring, are misleading. He took far fewer shots when he was with the Lakers, when he made his the furthest runs in the postseason. So that's, to me, just a brief explanation as to why Wilt Chamberlain's playoff numbers are misleading. He is truly a top 3 NBA player of all time. I only have Michael Jordan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar ahead of him, and only reason why I have Kareem ahead of him is because Kareem's resume is just better than his. But as peak for peak, to me, peak for peak as players, I have Wilt Chamberlain ahead of Kareem, even though Kareem was probably a better all-around player in certain aspects. But as far as dominance, prime for prime, I still have Wilt Chamberlain ahead of Kareem. But because Kareem just had a better overall career, the better resume, I have Kareem ahead of Wilt Chamberlain. But Wilt Chamberlain is a certified top 3 player of all time. Postseason is misleading, as I said before. In many ways, during Wilt's latter part of his career, he was trying to imitate Bill Russell to an extent. He wanted to say, prove, well, I could do what Bill Russell did even better. Whether he did or not, that's for other people to decide. I'm not going to go into that. But that's basically what happened. He just became more focused on defense and rebounding, and his scoring average just dropped because of that. I think his last year in the postseason he only averaged 10 points a game. It wasn't because he couldn't fucking score. It just was he was no longer a scorer. I mean, that wasn't his role on that team anymore. When it was necessary, he could still score. Had multiple 40-point games with the Lakers. He could score if he wanted to, but he just accepted his role, and it unfortunately affected his numbers. But that, to me, is just a brief explanation as to why Wilt Chamberlain's scoring average is the way it is, and I hope that better explains to you as well. And if you have any comments, if you disagree with me, please leave comments. Thank you.